Hello, my name is Kelly Kelly. Welcome to the NICU Now audio support series. I am a NICU parent to Jackson, a micro-preemie born at 24 weeks, and Lauren, a late-term preemie born at 34 weeks. I am also the founder and executive director of Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit dedicated to providing education, resources, and peer-to-peer support to families that have experienced premature birth, the loss of a baby, or have a child with a special healthcare need. Hand to Hold's NICU Now audio support series was developed to help NICU parents navigate their NICU journey. During pregnancy, mothers have intimate physical bonds with their baby. They are typically a little more excited about the purchase of maternity clothes, finding the softest baby blankets, and picking the best diaper bag. And they usually have sharper images and stronger expectations of the dream of the perfect birth. But fathers have dreams too, and their shattered expectations and inability to keep their wife and child safe during a traumatic birth may be very overwhelming. They may witness their child struggling for life at birth. They may find themselves faced with making critical medical decisions for their child while their wife is still in recovery. They often struggle to support their wives emotionally and find themselves exhausted as they try to balance life in the NICU, work, and often other children at home. Studies now find that NICU fathers are at a higher risk of developing postpartum depression, anxiety disorders, and PTSD. This is not surprising given they are less likely to reach out for support, talk openly about their feelings, and seek medical care. Fathers often feel helpless in the NICU. They desperately want to help their babies, but they don't know how. Author Tom French wrote the following of his NICU experience in Juniper, the girl who was born too soon. Junebug's early arrival, traumatic as it was, offered me a chance to help my daughter in a way few other men are ever granted. There was no handbook on how to bond with a micro-preemie, so I made it up. When someone from the lab came to draw more blood, I leaned in close and told Junebug how brave she was. When a tech arrived to perform another echocardiogram, I sang, "If I Only Had a Heart," the Tin Man song from The Wizard of Oz. A baby's long-term social and emotional development is directly impacted by their bond with both their mother and their father, so it is critical that fathers find ways to process their emotions and bond with their babies. Joining me now are 3 NICU graduate fathers who are here to share their personal insights into being a dad in the NICU. Michael Kelly is father to Jackson, born at 24 weeks in 2000, and Lauren, born at 34 weeks in 2003. He lives in Austin with me, his wife of 20 years, 2 teenagers, and 2 dogs that he tolerates. He enjoys playing baseball, cheering on his kids in boxing and volleyball, and watching Michigan football. He is also a card-carrying member of the Rat Pack fan club and once had a mullet while playing in a rock band before cleaning up his act to become a CPA. Scott Whitaker is father to Luke, born at 36 weeks in 2009. Luke was an IUGR baby and developed necrotizing enterocolitis on day 9 in the NICU. He lives in Austin with his wife Catherine and 5 more children ages 15 to 2. He enjoys coaching his kids' various sports activities, traveling, and is an avid Aggie sports fan. He has worked in fundraising and development for 18 years, many of those years working for the Catholic Church. And Michael Beatty is father of Liam, born at 30 weeks in 2009, due to his wife Jennifer's severe preeclampsia. They live in Austin with Liam and their older son Ty, age 13. Michael and the family enjoy scouting, camping, traveling, and attending the kids' school and sport events. When time allows, Michael is an avid ultra-distance runner and obstacle course masochist. I wish there were medals for fatherhood because each of you would definitely be wearing a lot of hardware. I am so thankful that you each agreed to be here to talk about your journey of finding your footing as a NICU parent. I know it will be very beneficial to dads who now walk in your shoes. Michael Kelly, as the most senior NICU dad here, I'd like to start with you. If you could just share with us How did you feel that day that I went into preterm labor and you were following the ambulance and you found yourself amidst a world we didn't even know existed, and kind of the feelings that you had when you witnessed that birth and you saw your son born so early?
Well, I was completely unprepared, and I did not know what was about to happen. I did not see my son being born. I saw you taken away, and the next thing I know, I was escorted out of the room, and they let me back in the room after Jackson was born. And when I first saw him, I did not think that he was alive. I thought he was dead. And when they told me that he was alive, I just couldn't believe it. And there were about 15 nurses and doctors working feverishly on him and saved his life. And the whole thing was quite a blur.
And tell everyone kind of your emotions that first time you were taken into the NICU to meet him.
I was scared. I thought that I would hurt him if I touched him. I didn't know what to think. He was in a very fragile state, and he couldn't breathe on his own. He was on a respirator, and there were a lot of tubes and wires connected to him. I had no idea what I was in for. I had no idea what I was looking at. I didn't even know what a NICU was. I didn't know that we were standing next to one when you went into labor.
Scott, if you don't mind stepping in here, did you have a similar experience when your wife, Catherine, went into preterm labor?
Thanks, Kelly. Our experience was a little different. Really, through the first part of her pregnancy, we didn't really know what to expect, and it wasn't until about 20 weeks that we knew there was going to be some concerns or some challenges for Luke. And when we didn't decide to go and take Luke a little bit early, about 4 or 5 weeks early, the experience was pretty surreal. It was interesting. We'd had 4 other children, and so they were pretty easygoing, pretty textbook pregnancies and deliveries. And so this was definitely new territory for us. Catherine had had a C-section, and we really weren't expecting that at all. Things seemed to be going pretty well those first 9 days, but then really what got us is on day 9 when we found out that he had necrotizing enterocolitis, and that's really when the vortex started spinning and things really got crazy at that time. I think what Mike had said, I remember vividly leaving the hospital and being transported by the ambulance over to the children's hospital. And it was this really interesting, weird feeling getting behind the wheel of the car and driving over and following that ambulance after we found out the initial diagnosis of a necrotizing enterocolitis. And that was a very quiet, very, very weird experience driving over because, as Mike said, you didn't really know what you were getting yourself into. You were really following something that you just didn't know what was going to happen when he arrived at the hospital. And so that experience of kind of following behind the ambulance was very weird and didn't really know what to expect on the other side.
And I would have to imagine that that's pretty hard for the stereotypical male to not have control over the situation, to not be able to protect their wife and protect their baby. Michael, I know Jennifer, your wife, had preeclampsia, which led to Liam's early birth. So did y'all have some forewarning that the baby would be delivered early? Were you prepared? Did you know what you were getting into in your first NICU adventure?
Pardon me, it's been 7 years, and so my wife, when she listens to this, is going to correct everything I'm going to say. Did we have any forewarning about having a NICU child? No, we didn't. I think I could be off on this. We had a matter of days when we kind of knew initially that Jennifer's health was not improving. You know, she went in for her routine visits and then noticed that, she had elevated blood pressure, which is always a sign that, there's something to be aware of and to watch. So what we had done is kind of did a follow-up, and at that point we noticed that it was escalating. At that point, I think it was probably the second or third visit, that it was decided that she was going to go into labor, induced labor. So they went ahead as quickly as they could, and they knew they had about 24 hours to induce some steroids into her to allow Liam to develop functionally with his lungs in order to come a little early. And at that point, we lived about 45 miles away from where he was going to be delivered, since we were kind of in a specialty operation that we knew we had to go to a different town to have that procedure done. So Jennifer was transported to the different town, and at that point, I'd followed behind the ambulance, and at that point, they had a C-section scheduled for Jennifer. So at that point, as I'm traveling behind the ambulance, there was nothing that I could have planned for that. And at that point, all I did was just kind of get into automated mode in which to be there for my wife and to kind of prepare to whatever comes next. And at that point, we went to the hospital. They had allowed as much time as possible for the steroids to take effect. And at that point, they had went ahead and scheduled a C-section. At that point, I did watch, it was in the room with my wife and watched the procedure being conducted. And it was a very surreal moment. And at that point, my young son was born. And